everyone, and welcome to Nintendo Everything Refresh, the official podcast of NintendoEverything.com, where we're coming at you every week with the latest and greatest news, everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. I'm your host, Nick Serpa, joined today by Nicolas AI.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
And we've also got Dennis Gagliardato.
Hello, hello.
And we were talking a little bit before the show, but it sounds like at least some of us are sleep deprived from the crazy week we've had here in the gaming world.
No, never.
No.
Gamers are always very well known to get all of their sleep they need.
Yeah, all the 8 hours they need, and the doctor never tells them otherwise.
Yeah. So, Nicholas, you're over in Europe. So the Game Awards was this week, for anyone who somehow missed all that. Nicholas, what time was the Game Awards going on, your time locally?
1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask.
It's a bit of a commitment, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was really excited for it. This was, I actually decided to go in person this year because I've always wanted to go, and it finally felt like the right time. And it was really cool getting to go and see it in person. I will say it's definitely feels like a different type of experience versus watching it online.
I believe it, yeah.
We were well, it was just me, but I was sitting over not like quite in the middle, but kind of off to like the left side of the theater, and you don't really realize like how often they're like not up on the main stage. Like Jeff and his friends, they were bouncing all over the auditorium, and so he'd be over on like this little side stage quite a bit. We could see all the crazy cameras they had set up, and this is really quite the production they put on.
Yeah, it's very clear that he works very hard. I mean, I know, everyone's going to have their opinions towards these shows and the quality of them, year after year. But I mean, to say he doesn't put in the work would be an absolute lie. I mean, it takes a long time to set this theater up and make sure everything runs fluidly and be on a proper schedule. Again, to make things run, fluidly and make sure that, the pacing is the most important part. And I feel like they absolutely nailed it this year because, the last couple of years for sure, I think the biggest criticism from most people has been like, look, either it's too long or like there's just a lot of boring moments, and it's just world premiere after world premiere, and it's like, look, this is no different than E3. This
too
is
many games, too many game announcements. Oh no!
Yeah. Right, and it's just like you kind of miss the point of, celebrating the medium, which is what he's trying to do, and I think he absolutely knocked it out of the park this year. Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this was the best game awards that we've had in several years. It's also worth knowing that even when it comes to game announcements themselves, we had just way less ads, it feels, and also way less trailers that are just CG cinematics. Just a lot more actual gameplay shown with the games, I feel, which is, it's always nice.
Yeah, I think that's the most important, honestly, because that, the biggest problem I have, especially with E3, has always been like, here's another cinematic trailer for a game we probably won't see for another 5 years, so I would rather things be, a little more ready and prepared and something that's a little closer by. Like, I feel like most of what we saw pretty much was stuff coming out in 2023 rather than 2024 and beyond, which was really cool.
Right. Yeah, no, this definitely felt like overall like a tighter show. It felt like they were going for quality over quantity. And there still was a lot of quantity for sure. But it didn't feel like there was nearly as much filler as there was in previous years.
Yeah, it didn't feel nearly as bloated.
Yeah, it also just felt like we were kind of moving through it at a much better pace than we have some other years.
Yeah, definitely. And so basically what we're going to do with this episode is we're going to kind of just talk through all these Switch-related announcements for the Game Awards, because believe it or not, there was actually a surprising amount of stuff, including some stuff from Nintendo, which we don't always get. One thing I just want to shout out real quick before we get in, and mostly because I just haven't seen a lot of coverage on this. So right before the Game Awards, happening right out in front of the venue, there were actually a group, some activists there, and they were with a group called the Game Workers Alliance, and they were just being super chill, and their whole thing was they were trying to remind people about all the other things that were going on in the gaming industry this year. All these reports we've seen, in regards to how some of these companies are treating their employees. And they were trying to make people who were going to the event aware of that. So I just thought that was really cool, and I wanted to shout it out because you have to remember that like all these games that are being shown off, like they're made by people, you know, and we got to make sure these people are being treated fairly and being paid a living wage. So I just thought that was an important thing to shout out. But in terms of the games itself, I mean, man, we Switch fans are eating pretty good. And so I want to start off with talking about Nintendo's output and what they showed off. Probably the biggest surprise of the showcase I don't think anyone would have called this is another Bayonetta game was announced at the Game Awards. Yeah. Like, wow.
It's not releasing in 5 years.
Coming. No, it's not. Okay, so this game is called Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon. And this is a totally different type of Bayonetta game. I mean, unlike anything that this franchise has seen, it's all kind of like this hand-painted like watercolor aesthetic. It's kind of an isometric action game. And they're billing it as like, hey, we're gonna tell Bayonetta's origin story in this game. And it just looks really different. I've never seen anything like it. And it's coming out in March, so like right around the corner. Mm-hmm. Then Dennis, I know you are a huge Bayonetta fan. What do you make of this?
I think I fell in love right away, not just because of the fact that it's, you know, Bayonetta obviously, but like it reminded me very quickly of, you know, I just love the Okami inspired art direction that they've got on it, and so that was amazing to see. I think this is refreshing. When I saw the title, because I'm sure I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but you know, one of my cats, you know, her name is Cereza. You know, very, very much inspired by Bayonetta. So yeah, it was, you know, when the title came up, I was like, look, baby, it's you. And but yeah, no, it looks incredible. It's super refreshing. And yeah, I'm stoked for it. I like that it has more of it looks more like a puzzle game, really, if anything, which I'm all for. I'm totally for. I love these atmospheric adventure puzzle games. I've always had a soft spot for them. So yeah, I'm super stoked for this. I think it looks great.
Yeah, you have to name your next cat Cheshire now.
That is true.
Yeah, you got to keep the trend going.
I know. I've thought about it.
No, I think my big takeaway with this, and Nicholas, I do want to hear your thoughts on this as well, but I think the big thing that surprised me was like, Nintendo could have picked any game to show in the showcase. I mean, they have so much good stuff coming out, and they decided to take their slot that they probably paid a lot of money for to have their game showcased, and highlight a spin-off of Bayonetta, basically. I mean, I guess I would call this a spin-off. I don't know, maybe you guys disagree, but like, you know, Bayonetta, like a couple years ago, I mean, it was just big when we had Bayonetta 3 announced at the Game Awards, you know, but that kind of made sense because it's like this big tentpole release that was coming up. And this feels like a smaller game. And so the fact that Nintendo is highlighting, you know, this smaller game from this IP that, you know, is not one of Nintendo's most popular franchises is like really cool and not something I would have predicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that's just because they've kind of created an association between Bayonetta and the Game Awards due to everything with Bayonetta 3. So they just thought, you know what? We don't want to talk about like Tears of the Kingdom yet, so maybe we can fill it with this instead.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Awesome.
Nicholas, is this like, this is a very different type of Bayonetta game. Does this still have appeal to you, or is this, you know, just, I don't know, what do you think?
I mean, it definitely does. Just like Dennis said, the art style is just, it's to die for. Yeah. I think it's super interesting because this was actually something that was hinted at in Bayonetta 3, where once you've beaten the game, there's this, I think it's the old notebook. It's an item you can purchase that doesn't really do anything. It's kind of just an aesthetic thing. Unless you get 3 secret keys that are hidden in the game that only unlock in the post-game. And if you do that, the book opens and you get like probably like a 5-minute demo. It's super short. But that is literally this game. It's this art style, and it's just probably the very start of this game playing as Cereza.
Oh, wow.
And after that happened and people started finding that out, there were a bunch of theories of like, oh, what exactly is this? And, well, now we know.
That's crazy. Gosh. Yeah, now, this is... I do want to know more about this game, because Nintendo's asking a full $60 for this release.
Oh, my God,
in the US.
Yeah, really? It's a full release.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah. which I think is gonna maybe cause some pause for some people. Not to say that this game may not be worth it, because I'm sure a lot of work and clearly a lot of artistry has gone into telling this story. But right on the heels of Bayonetta 3, which is just I think the type of game that most people would associate with the franchise. It's just an interesting choice. But I know there are a lot of Bayonetta fans out there who are very excited for this. And we've got a bunch of them right here. So, yeah.
Yeah, have you guys seen the box art? The box art is incredible.
Oh, it looks so good.
God.
Really?
Oh, Lord, that's some of the best box art I've seen in a long time. Like, my God, the art is just perfect. It's I can't stress enough how good the art is in this game. Like, it's so good.
It makes me really want them to work on other Okami.
Oh, of course. Of course. I gotta ask Capcom.
I also wonder if, like, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but the way they kind of did the title, like Bayonetta Origins, they could have just called it that, but they added this long subtitle to it, which makes me wonder, could this be like the start of like a small little sub-series of these mini, like, Bayonetta Origins franchise games? And the first one is just Cereza.
Yeah, small $60 games, yeah.
Yeah, small $60 games.
Yeah, apparently Kamio was on Twitter, which, I mean, nothing new, but he was asking people what character would like to have a spin-off game of next. I think the choices were like John, Luca, Loki, and Rodon. So maybe that could be hitting, like, we want to do more things like this.
Right.
Although, yeah, for the record, I think John won with like over half of the vote. So expect like a QDJ origin story at some point.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will depend on how this game does. We got a lot of other games to talk about, so I'm going to try and keep things moving a little bit here. Now, this one, I think, also came as a surprise for different reasons. So Fire Emblem Engage had a little bit of a showcase at the Game Awards. It had a commercial, but the main thing was they revealed the expansion pass at the Game Awards, which I don't think a lot of folks saw coming, considering the game is not even out yet. But Nintendo has been doing that more and more lately.
Yeah, definitely to mixed reception, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
They didn't really go into a lot of detail other than that, some new characters are coming, just some in-game items. I mean, in my opinion, they didn't really do a great job of selling this expansion pass, and so it felt a little out of place.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I'm also just not a fan that, like, already obviously day one DLC is something that is going to be pretty contentious. And I feel it can work and be kind of palatable if it's nothing super important. Like, obviously I'm biased here, but something like Xenoblade 3, the day one DLC was purely a little bit of cosmetics and like the smallest quality of life items that barely had an impact on gameplay. Whereas this seems to have a bit more than that, where it's, the new Emblem, two new Emblem characters, and then I remember reading some of the description of the items. They're good, but they're also kind of too good, I feel, in some ways. Like, if I recall correctly, the silver card that's being offered is something that cuts all shop prices by 30%, which just seems like it's a little bit something for, like,
pay to win.
A little bit, but also just like for day one DLC, I would want it to not be some serious amount of new content that, so it doesn't really feel like they're cutting off a bit of the game to resell you on day one, which is a little bit what this feels like with the emblems.
Right. I think personally, I feel like the whole kind of gimmick of this game is, again, we've talked about this in a little bit in the past, but is that you can, like bringing in characters from previous Fire Emblem games is a central mechanic to Fire Emblem Engage. It's not like kind of this relegated offside thing. They're kind of basing a lot of their marketing for this game around, we have all these characters coming back for this game. And so I think a lot of people might have just assumed that you get some of these characters, from three houses in it, because that's kind of the gimmick of the game. So it does seem a little strange to me that that's kind of the approach that they're taking. Like, they are kind of,
I just feel like
these characters.
Yeah, it does feel that way. But not to mention, like, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but historically, these expansion passes, you've never really been able to purchase these things individually. right? Like it's either you get the expansion pass and you get it all, or you're not getting anything. Period. Is that right?
Usually, yeah.
I think there might be a few exceptions, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like it's either go big or go home. I guess you can't just pick and choose what you really find interesting out of it. So you either shell out the did they say how much this is? $25, $30, like that, US dollars. I don't know, but
They probably did mention it.
Yeah, it's not popping up for me right this second, but
Okay,
but yeah,
yeah.
four waves or so. I think you'd imagine probably in the $25-$30 range.
yeah, it just seems. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It puts a bad
Yeah.
taste in my mouth, but I know the game's going to be great regardless. So, because I don't think Nintendo would, I'm a firm believer that if DLC is what makes your game good, then you inherently have a bad game. I'm sorry, but
Right.
but I don't think Nintendo's going to do that with Fire Emblem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's $30
Yeah.
for the record.
Okay.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, and this does definitely feel like the type of expansion pass. I mean, other than like, it is worth noting they are going to be adding a whole additional story in the fourth wave, which is coming out sometime at the end of next year. But it seems like the approach they've been taking lately with these season passes or expansion passes, as they like to call them, is we're really targeting this towards the people who are really into this game, like the people who want every little bit of content they can get out of it, who can easily justify paying $30 for some extra characters. It doesn't look like, at least at this point, I mean, maybe once we get a better sense for what the story expansion looks like, this will change. But what they've shown off so far does not seem like they're expecting everyone to rush out and buy this thing, It doesn't seem to have like the same immediate appeal that something like, the Smash character, reveals would have, or the Mario Kart expansion course,
Yeah.
But
Which also makes it
we
odd
shall
that
see.
it makes it odd that they chose this to highlight at the Game Awards of all things. Feels kind of
right.
random.
Right. It feels to me like they're like, let's get some of these smaller things out of the way, make room in our Nintendo Direct coming in February. Yeah. And one other thing they showed off, we're not going to talk about this too much, just because we did just get a second trailer for the Super Mario movie, but they did actually put out a good chunk of just like unedited film footage at the Game Awards, and it's basically what you'd expect. I thought it was pretty charming, seeing Mario like going through a pipe and just completely just getting beaten up and obliterated by that poor thing.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. I thought Toad's personality actually came through really well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes, yeah. Keegan-Michael Key was at the Game Awards presenting an award, and it was kind of funny. You just see him up on stage, and then you hear him voicing Toad, and it was like, okay, I can kind of see where their mind was at when they're doing all this casting. It's all starting to come together a bit more for me.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. All right, well, let's switch over to the third-party front, because a good amount of, and we are going to talk about the actual awards too, I promise, that it is called the Game Awards after all. But the announcements are why a lot of people tune in, for better or for worse. So, but yeah, in the third-party front, lots of surprises. I think the big one for the Switch in particular is Hades 2.
Hades.
I thought you were going to say Death
Not a lot
Stranding.
of people. Oh God, I wish. Yeah, I don't know how that Switch port would perform. But, yeah. So Nicholas, you're over there mumbling incoherently to yourself.
Chanting,
about
yes.
Hades. Yeah. So I don't think you saw this coming, did you?
I did not. I mean, Supergiant is like the big indie studio that is known for every single game they do something different. They've never had like a sequel or an expansion to any of their games they've ever made in like the last decade. So I loved Hades. I've bought a few of their other games but have not gone around to playing them. And I just like, man, I wish there was more Hades, but I also I accepted that there wouldn't be because they're known for just doing different things, and I was okay with that. So seeing that they actually are doing just a full-blown sequel to the game is so exciting. I'm so looking forward to it.
Yeah, even though it is it sounds like it's a ways out still. They didn't really even have a release window at this point. We get some more information on like early access next year, so it is a ways away. But yeah, it's very unprecedented for them, and it really just speaks to how big of a success that game was for them. I mean, their other games have been great. I mean, I've played a few of them, but none of them broke out in the same way that Hades did.
Not only that, but I think, you have to commend them from where they started to where they are now. I mean, they've always been, releasing just quality games. I mean, I remember the first time I played Bastion, and I still maintain this. I think that game's a masterpiece, with some of the best soundtrack, like one of the best soundtracks in video game history. But, how far they've come to the point where, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but like when the studio name popped up, I mean, the place seemed to have roared.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, so, that studio, Supermassive Games, you see that name and that's become a symbol of quality now. And yeah, it was just super exciting to see. I think the art direction, once again, looks absolutely phenomenal. Hades, just to echo what you guys said, and really to echo what everyone feels, because I don't think I've heard one bad thing about it. That game is phenomenal. And Hades 2 just looked equally as great. I mean, it really did just look so polished and beautiful.
Yeah. I haven't played the first Hades yet, but I am very interested in it because I've heard that even though it's a roguelite, it doesn't feel like one as much because of the way that the narrative is designed, which just sounds really cool.
It's super fluid, and take it from me, who, like, whenever I see rogue pop up in the summary of a game, I'm moving on. I lose interest immediately. I'm serious. I can't stand, like, rogue games. I really can't. So Hades really opened my eyes to what that genre can be. However, I will say still nothing meets the quality and fun of Hades, because I've tried other ones that, once Hades kind of eased me in, and then I was like, nope, yeah, this is still how I feel about this genre. And then so Hades is really the only one where I'm like, yes, no, this is fantastic. Just like you said, because of that narrative that's so seamless and flows almost naturally with some of the best voice acting I've ever heard in my life, quite frankly.
Right. And I guess it's worth noting that this game technically has not been 100% confirmed for Switch yet. They just announced the game, but it seems extremely likely that it will come to Switch because, there's no reason for it not to.
Yeah.
One would hope. So yeah, that's really exciting. Another big surprise was, of all the superhero IP that I might have predicted to show up, I did not expect Hellboy to get a announcement. We're getting this is also a roguelite apparently, which they did not mention when they announced the game, but we're getting a Hellboy roguelite action adventure game. It's called a Hellboy Web of, I think it's pronounced Wyrd. Hellboy Web of Wyrd. And yeah, it's I guess a story-focused action roguelite game featuring Hellboy, which is, so I don't really know much about who Hellboy is other than that he has these weird goggle things that are like baked into his head. But do either of you guys have any additional insight?
Well, they used to be horns.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, so that's what I know.
Yeah,
but Hellboy is not really a major brand nowadays.
Not really, no. I mean, it definitely had its heyday during the Guillermo del Toro films, when those were around. But yeah, and then they had tried to reboot it again with David Harbour, like maybe just a couple of years ago. And I don't think that did particularly well in the box office. So yeah, which is a shame, because I think Hellboy has a fascinating universe, actually. But yeah, I mean, other than Guillermo del Toro, that IP hasn't been used particularly well, I feel.
Yeah. This game reminds me like very similar aesthetically to that John Wick game that came out a few years ago. I think it's called John Wick Hex.
That's right, yeah.
It's got that very same kind of just, I mean, it's a very beautiful like cell shaded art style. It also looks very similar to Sable now that I think about it. We've seen a lot of games with this art style lately, but I'm here for it, man. I don't know why it has to be a roguelite though, because I feel like, I don't know. This would be a really good chance to tell like a really cool story with this character and maybe bring in some new fans, but I think it's going to have a harder time bringing in new fans with this type of structure. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my prediction.
It's definitely a choice, right? It's not something you see often for like a licensed game.
Right. Still really cool. Wasn't expecting it. This one definitely got some folks excited when I was sitting in the auditorium. Also, just a side note first, every time the Switch logo came up, it didn't matter what it was for. I think everyone thought it was going to be like Metroid, and so everyone just lost their minds every time the Switch logo came up, and then things would get really quiet when people were like, wait, what is this?
What are we cheering for?
Yeah. I really did think, and there was one moment in particular, I know it was all just wishful thinking on my part, it ended up being for the Star Wars game that they showed off at the Game Awards. But there's one part where they brought up the screen on stage, and there's this weird like cryogenic futuristic chamber and all this sci-fi stuff around it, and there's this woman like floating in the cryo tank, and I was like, oh my god, this has to be Metroid. I was sitting there clutching the sides of my head, about to lose my mind, and I was so disappointed. That one's on me, but I
One
don't
hell of a
think it was the
redesign for
only one.
Samus.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, really, I know. Again, wishful thinking, but
I'll tell you what,
do.
though, Metroid aside, I do think that game looks fantastic. I know it's not coming to Switch, but that game looks
it
great.
looks really good.
Because
Yeah,
Jedi
really
Fallen
good.
Order was like, wow. I mean, that game really blew me away. Like, I went in with, like, I feel like pretty moderate expectations. But, man, it exceeded that, like, tenfold. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, one of the best Star Wars games has been the common consensus. But anyways, we're not talking about that because it's not coming to Switch, so who cares, right? No, I'm kidding. I very much care. But here's something that might be coming to Switch that was shown off at the Game Awards. Earthblade, the next 2D side-scrolling adventure from the makers of Celeste, excitingly.
Yeah, it's got me hyped.
Yeah, and this one is a Metroidvania, which is a big shift for them because Celeste was, as far as I recall, just very stage-based, and so it'd be cool to see what they do with, taking their very sharp platforming and putting it into this slightly bigger structure.
Yeah, I think it'll work really well just because, like, even though Celeste, like you said, was a very sort of straightforward, sort of, stage-like platformer, it definitely had the workings in terms of, like, the map structure itself. It definitely had the workings of a Metroidvania. So, yeah, and that game was just absolutely incredible. So, and then seeing this, clearly, the pixel art is still on point. I mean, because wow.
Yep.
And, yeah, Celeste was just really, really fantastic, beautiful game. So, I'm this immediately caught my attention. I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, and it almost seems like I was reading a little bit of the game's kind of summary that they provided in their PR materials, and they were saying that so you're returning at long last to Earth is kind of their shtick, which makes me wonder if maybe there's like a science fiction-y slant to it. It all looks very fantasy from the trailer. Whenever I hear like returning at long last to Earth, it's like, that sounds like there might be some science fiction, post-apocalyptic shenanigans going on here. Who knows? But yeah, this one is still a little ways away. They're saying 2024 right now, which, hey, at least they're being upfront about that. But definitely something to look forward to, I think.
Yeah.
I do think it's really funny, just the title and logo have such old, like, maybe SNES, NES, like, RPG vibes.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Honestly, it looks like a mixture of like
charming,
Zelda and Earthbound, honestly. The logo to me. I think it looks great, though. I love it. I love the colors. I love the design. Everything about it just has so much finesse to it. I love it.
Yeah, they're leaning into the nostalgia for sure, which I definitely cannot fault them for that because it's totally going to work. All right, just a couple other smaller things here, although some of these are interesting. So a crossover I don't think anyone expected. So Dead Cells has been on the Switch for a couple years now, but and for those who aren't familiar, it's another roguelite action game side scroller that's pretty popular. One of the more, I think, well known in the genre, just broadly speaking. And it is getting a crossover with Castlevania for some reason. Konami decided they want to license the Castlevania IP to Dead Cells, which, hey,
Is
it's not a
Konami
pachinko
cool
machine.
again?
So
Are they becoming cool again? Like, what's happening?
they're trying.
Let's not go that far, but they're trying at least.
They're trying.
Yeah.
I mean, Dead Cells was cool a couple years ago, right? So, it's... No, I'm just kidding. A lot of people still love Dead Cells. It just felt so random. I was like, why is this happening? But, I mean, I'm sure it'll be good.
Dead Cells has gotten a lot of just consistent DLC and expansions over the years. It's kind of nuts.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Yeah, very, the whole aesthetics, the person sitting next to me, they were like, is this like a Symphony of the Night, like, remake at first? Like, they didn't know what it was. But, like, they were really leaning hard into that Castlevania branding. Like, I hope that the game looks like the vibes they were pushing out in this trailer,
Yeah, it was a fun animation.
Yeah. because it might be the closest we get to a new Castlevania game for the foreseeable future. So
Yeah.
yeah. Among Us also on the Switch. They got a little announcement. There's a new mode that's actually already out, just a free update. It's a hide and seek mode, which I guess is I don't look. I'm not going to pretend like I play a lot of Among Us. Okay, I don't really know if this mode is significantly different from the other one. I felt like the main game already was kind of like a hide and seek game, but I digress.
It's kind of just like the roles are flipped in a way.
Yeah, I think this one's just
okay.
a little more
Yeah,
blunt, where it's just like instead of choosing, who the imposter is, it's just everyone just knows right away, and it's like, okay, just stay away from them, basically.
Go hide and avoid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, but yeah, at least it is a free update and it is already out, so you can probably go play it right now. And then one other final thing for the Switch. This was just a really quick thing they showed off in an ad. We talked about it a little bit previously on the show. But there is a remake of Colossal Cave Adventure, of all things, coming to Switch. And it's totally different. The original Colossal Cave was like a text-based adventure from 70s, I want to say, well before any of us were born. And for some reason, in 2023, it is getting a 3D remake coming to Switch and other platforms. And yeah, we now know that is coming in January. So, not too long to wait.
Yep.
Still don't really understand this one. Yeah, I'm sure it is a very big deal, especially for the people who were originally involved in this game. But yeah, it's another weird one to me.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, and you're seeing a lot of this come back, which is good because I think you're introducing stuff like this to a new generation with a new perspective, So, but I mean, we had the Oregon Trail not that long ago too, like the get remade, and then now it's this. It's all these old, I'm expecting like Pong remastered to come out soon,
Yeah. Well, funny that you mentioned that actually, Dennis, because no joke. Atari has actually been remaking a lot of their older arcade games and putting a lot of them on the Switch. Like they put out like a Centipede Recharged and Asteroids Recharged and a bunch of kind of reimages. So Pong they have not done yet, but I would not be surprised.
Wait for
it's on the way.
ET for Atari remade.
That's right.
Yeah.
ET Deluxe.
There you go. And that pretty much wraps up all the Switch-based announcements. Again, lots of other great games shown off. I really want to talk about some of them, but we're really short on time because there's so much stuff to talk about. I think we should actually probably talk about the awards portion of the Game Awards. Nintendo had a pretty strong showing. They were nominated for a bunch of awards this year across a ton of different categories, and they won quite a few of them. Very worth celebrating, in my opinion. Bayonetta 3 won Best Action Game, which is very cool. Up against some stiff competition in that category, and it really could have gone a lot of different ways. But yeah, Best Action Game going to our lovely little Bayonetta 3 that just came out.
Yep, that was awesome.
Yeah, and you could tell that was a surprise, I think, even to when Doug Bowser went up on stage for that one to accept it. Even he seemed a little surprised and excited for that one.
Yeah, because man, I expected to really warm my seat tonight, but it looks like I had to get up and burn a few calories.
What an inconvenience.
Yeah. What an inconvenience. Yeah. And this is cool. He was called out the folks at Platinum Games. He was like, "Oh, I'm sure they're watching over in Japan." I'm like, "Oh, it's got to be cool, especially working on a project like that after everything the Bayonetta franchise has gone through."
Of course, yeah.
It's a very cool award. Best Family Game. Now, this was a category that would have been really shocking if Nintendo just didn't win because they had 4 of the 5 nominations. But they did. They won. Kirby and the Forgotten Land won Best Family Game. That's an interesting one to me. We talked about this a little bit in the past because it is a single-player game, right? Or do
Yeah,
we
it
do
means
co-op
co-op.
elements?
Yeah, you can technically do co-op, yeah.
Okay. But when I think family game, it doesn't jump to mind in the same way that something like Switch Sports does, personally.
Right, or Mario Party or something like that.
I mean, honestly, the category would do better if it was just renamed Best Nintendo Game, because that's basically what it ends up being.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly. Yeah, honestly, if I'm being totally fair, though, Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, the one non-Nintendo game on there, is really a totally great choice for that award as well.
Yeah.
Just because that game has such a strong focus on local co-op. Everyone knows Star Wars. You know, it's Legos. I mean, what's not family friendly? Right?
That game was packed with content too.
I will take Kirby winning though, because I think Kirby and the Forgotten Land is just, it's one of the best Kirby games they've made, and I'm just happy to see it getting any amount of recognition. I still feel like it should have been nominated for like Best Action Adventure. Personally, I'm sure that's not necessarily a popular choice, but man, I'm just happy to see it getting something.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a case to be made there.
I think it's one of the best games to come out this year, personally. I thought that game was absolutely fantastic, and yeah, just like you said, Nicholas, I think it's one of the best games in the franchise, like ever, really. Yeah, so it's very nice to see it get that recognition and get that award that it definitely deserves. Could it have been in more categories? Sure, of course, but I'm glad that it at least got something, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you know, kind of similar to how you guys feel about that, I was really excited to see Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope win Best Sim Strategy Game. Because man, I mean, maybe I'm sure I'm a little biased because I'm not a huge strategy guy in the first place, and that one just really clicked with me. But that game just did a lot of really cool things and really pushed the genre forward, in my opinion. And so, I think it was a really fair and good choice to win that award.
Yep. Not a super surprising winner. Yeah. I'm still looking forward to playing that game at some point when it goes on sale.
Yeah, I would recommend it. Just, man, be ready to set aside some hours because it's definitely longer than I assumed going in. Well worth it though. Best multiplayer game, Splatoon 3 took that one, which is very exciting because up against some very stiff competition. With Multiversus in particular, that one got a lot of buzz this year. Call of Duty games obviously always have a lot of brand power. Overwatch 2, you know, that was its competition also though, so maybe Splatoon 3 had a good chance from the start.
My impression is that Overwatch 2 fans were happy Splatoon 3 won, which I think says a lot.
Dennis, what say you?
You know, it was definitely shocking. Do I think it's deserved? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not, but you know, but it's weird when you look at the other nominees where it's just like, honestly, like it was just surprising just because of its take on multiplayer, right? The rest that were nominated definitely had their own sort of spin on, you know, or a more traditional take on, you know, what a first-person shooter typically is. But yeah, I mean, I think it's deserved for the most part. It's just my only, I think, gripe with it was I was thinking of it in terms of like, wow, you know, Splatoon 3 wins Best Multiplayer, you know, and I mean, Splatoon 3 is a crazy amount of fun, but, you know, what does that say when, you know, the biggest criticism for Splatoon 3, as was Splatoon 2, was this is the same thing again. You know, other than like a story mode. So it's like, okay, well, clearly we can just sell the same product and win some awards. So let's keep up the good.
Clearly, it says that it's a very solid, well-built game that needs no improvements, Dennis. Obviously.
Fair enough.
Well, I was going to say when half of the competition barely functions out of the gate. I mean, that's kind of yeah. No, it's really cool. I think, you know, again, with any of these categories, I'm not saying that any of the games didn't deserve to win because all these games had a lot of time and effort poured into them by the developers, but really cool to see something like Splatoon win Best Multiplayer for sure. And in this last category that Nintendo won in, the official name is Most Anticipated. I like to call it Most Pre-Ordered Game at GameStop because that's really what it is. Yeah. But yeah, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom won Most Anticipated Game. That's over the new Final Fantasy, over Hogwarts Legacy, Resident Evil 4, Starfield. I don't really know how they measure Most Anticipated. I guess it's like anything in the Game Awards, it's a mix of like, you know, popularity votes from fans and what critics think, and so I know we're all very excited for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that honestly didn't surprise me when it won. I was thinking either that or like, even though the other games were absolutely incredible and all absolutely hype worthy, it wouldn't have shocked me if Resident Evil 4 had won. And I honestly thought it was going to, only because of the history that that game has had and how long people have been asking for a remake for it. So, you know, now that it's, you know, coming to fruition, like it's, you know, it's huge for so many people. And I mean, if you thought 2 and 3 sold well, my lord, 4 is gonna, that's gonna do some numbers for Capcom. I really do believe that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Although I think Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, didn't it win most anticipated game like last year as well? So it was very anticipated last year. Yeah. So I think it's still very anticipated.
They'll delay it on purpose just so they can win another award this year.
That might be their strategy. Yeah. Building up a little collection there. Yeah. Yeah, so
just
I
tears
think
of the
now,
fans. That's what it's gonna be.
Pretty much, yeah. No, it's Tears of the Xenoblade fans. Let's be real. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 did not win any awards this entire event.
I do want to put into perspective that Nintendo won awards in literally every category their games were nominated in, except for the ones where Xenoblade was nominated in.
Oh, yeah, that's a little bit of a bummer.
It's yeah. I mean, on the one hand, like, Xenoblade was never gonna win Game of the Year. It might have won our best RPG, but that was a really far shot with Elden Ring being there.
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I know
like,
Elden Ring is an RPG, but I to me, like Souls-like games, that whole subgenre, it feels like a totally different genre to me.
I agree. I've been thinking this a lot, but I see why it's nominated as Best RPG. I still think it should be Best Action Adventure. And I think in general the Best RPG category just has some very odd choices sometimes. Like them putting Monster Hunter games under Best RPG certain years, which is just it's not right. But it was going to win that. Right, it was Elden Ring is always going to win that just because it's Elden Ring and it was one of the favorites. What really stings is best score.
Game of the Year.
Best score hurts.
Yeah. that was the big one where I was like, wow, really? Because that went to God of War, right?
Yeah.
Ragnarok. Yeah. So yeah, I was really surprised. Like that was, if any category that it should have won, absolutely. I think that should have been the one for Xenoblade. Yeah. So that was.
And really surprising. Like no dig on God of War, but I feel like if Xenoblade didn't win, there were some of the other nominees definitely, I think, deserved it a little bit more. Like, I have not heard anyone heap praise on God of War's music. I've heard a lot of praise for Ragnarok in general, but I don't think I've heard anyone say, like, oh, the soundtrack is, like, sublime or whatever. And, I mean, I've heard that for Elden Ring. Metal Hellsinger is based around its music, so I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's one of the main things you hear with Xenoblade games in general, and that, you know, it still stands for 3, that the music is one of the highlights. So that was definitely... That one annoyed me. That one annoys me just a little bit.
I think soundtrack is probably one of the harder categories, because with a lot of these things, you can quantify these games in other ways. You can be like, okay, best fighting game. Well, you know, this game had these technical issues, this game wasn't very well balanced, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to something like music, I mean, that is, I think, even more, you know, just a much wider, like, how do I put the right words to this?
When it comes to like really good music,
you know, like how do you quantify something as like a fully orchestrated soundtrack in the same way that you quantify like game design? You know, like they're very different. And so when you get to like you're comparing God of War's soundtrack with Xenoblade 3's soundtrack, like they're all just excellent in their own ways. You know, how do you really say what's the best?
I think part of it for me is that it kind of feels like the Game Awards, when it comes to best score, tends to lean towards like movie theater style scores, where it's like big bombastic things that you hear in the moment, but don't really have an impact by themselves. They're there to like sell the moment in game, which is kind of the case for all video game music. But I feel like other soundtracks like Xenoblade's, you can listen to the music by itself and still appreciate it very well, like as a piece of music standalone, which I think is what kind of edges it out for me. I like even just for the orchestra performance, which was, it was very good. But I think out of all the songs that played, the only ones that stood out to me were Horizon and Xenoblade 3's segment, because all the others just felt similar. And that is kind of just the orchestra in general, where they just kind of had everything be very, not samey, but just kind of blend into each other so that it felt like a cohesive piece. But still, the fact that Xenoblade 3 kind of stood out the most to me, I feel like just speaks to the fact it had one of the stronger soundtracks of the nominees. Anyways.
Man, no, that's okay. You're having me thinking about like when I was sitting in the audience, and I actually didn't feel like being in the auditorium. It was actually harder to hear the orchestra than I felt like it was over the live stream in previous years when I've watched it. Yeah, something about the acoustics of that room. I felt like I was missing a lot of the notes in the orchestra, a lot of the different instruments. It all kind of muddled together. So I was like, I'm going to go back and re-listen to this once I get home. But anyways, so that is the Game Awards in a nutshell. Lots of cool announcements. Nintendo brought home quite a few awards. Maybe not the ones that everyone wanted.
Well, I do also want to note, just quickly,
some great representation.
Even if Xenoblade 3 did not get any awards, it got nominated for some big categories, and I think that's the most important thing. So I'm not that salty.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, the fact that it even got nominated for a Game of the Year, I think alone is
that alone is huge. So it's fine.
Yeah. Which really just goes to show like the weight that the Game Awards have kind of established for themselves in the industry over the past 6, 7, 8 years that the show's been running. It has really become the industry thing. So
I mean, regardless of whether people think they are valid or not, because there's still a lot of people that think they just don't matter or kind of a scam or whatever. Like, they have weight just through their name and the fact that, people talk about them. I think that alone gives them some degree of validity.
Totally. All right, so there was other news that happened this week outside of the Game Awards, believe it or not. I know that's all everyone is talking about. But let's kind of switch over and talk about some of these broader industry happenings for a little bit. So we talked a little bit in the past about the craziness going on with Microsoft trying to acquire Activision Blizzard and all the legal challenges they're facing with that. And I'm not even going to get into whether or not like it's a good thing or a bad thing, because it's all just big companies buying other big companies. It doesn't affect my day to day. But Microsoft really wants to buy Activision Blizzard to the point that they put out they made a actual like agreements with Nintendo to, and they really want to do a similar thing with PlayStation, but that was kind of up in the air. But to try and get this whole merger to go through, they signed a 10-year agreement with Nintendo that says if the agreement goes through, they will bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms for 10 years. Like, just flat out, they're going to do it. Regardless of the technical hurdles along the way, I guess.
I mean, Call of Duty has had a presence on, Nintendo consoles before. But I think the last time was, I don't even remember which one, but I think the last time was on Wii U forever ago. And that could have been Black Ops or something, I don't know. But
yeah, it was like Black Ops 3
or maybe even
2
Ghost,
or one of them.
something like that. Yeah, it was
maybe.
Either way, it was a long time ago. But I mean, they've had a presence before. God knows just about everything that released. Third party was also included on the Wii. I don't think Wii missed a single Call of Duty release, and Wii was pretty underpowered compared to PS3 and 360 at the time.
Weren't there Call of Duty games on the DS? Like, it was.
Yes, there were actually. Yes, there was.
Yeah, they were all called like the Reflex Edition.
Something like that. Yeah, which I always thought was interesting because it kind of gives them almost like a specialized port by giving them a sort of different take on the same sort of material. But in a way, where we are now, where we're standing now in terms of technology, it is weird and sort of, I'm not going to say impossible, because God knows the Switch has seen some pretty impossible ports, but
totally.
But if you're going to tell me, if you're going to look me dead in the eye, I don't know if you guys have seen, regardless if you've played it or not, it's because it went around for a while, the opening mission where they're in Amsterdam in Modern Warfare 2. If you're gonna look me dead in the eye and tell me, yes, that can run on Switch, no, absolutely not. I will break the Switch over your face. Absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
Wow.
But I
No,
will
I
say,
mean you're totally right.
Yeah.
I don't see how they can bring over modern Call of Duty like as it is right now.
However,
to current Switch. I mean,
but unless they do like spin-offs and stuff, which no one said it was Call of Duty mainline releases. They could do Call of Duty Tactics or something, for like, do a Fire Emblem version of Call of Duty or Call of Duty Party or something. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, and we talked about this in a previous episode. There were like, there's so many different ways they could go about it. I mean, even like the PlayStation Vita, it only had one Call of Duty release, but it was built from the ground up for it.
That's right.
And if Microsoft is really going to get locked into this 10-year commitment with Nintendo platforms, well, they better come up with some ideas because you're contractually obligated now. So, I mean, hey, maybe it will have them make some unique things or.
It is worth noting that they also made a commitment to just get it onto Nintendo platforms, not the Switch specifically. And I think they even, Phil Spencer elaborated later on that it will probably take a little bit of development time to actually get this process up and running to have consistent releases. So it's very feasible that we might not get a Call of Duty on Switch, and that if a potential Switch successor comes out in like, say 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years from now, we'll start seeing things come out on that instead, which presumably would be able to run it.
Right. Yeah. I was reading the comments on our story on Nintendo.Everything.com about this, and I just want to read this one because it made me laugh, and it pretty much echoes my thoughts exactly. From the Foo Fighter, they say, "I always thought it was kind of weird that there was literally no Call of Duty on Switch. I don't like the series and probably wouldn't play it, but it's just kind of crazy that they looked at the third best-selling system ever and just went, nah."
Yeah.
I mean, really, it feels like it's the kind of thing that could print a lot of money.
It is weird. Well, especially, I mean, you want to talk about flexibility. I mean, Call of Duty is on mobile now too, right? So it's just like, I mean, why not just do a Switch version of that?
Yes. You know about that? How big is the file size on mobile?
That is a great question. I don't know. I haven't downloaded it, but something like Genshin
it's hard to say now. Yeah, well, nowadays what they do is like the actual app download itself will be small, but you open it up and it's like, oh, we need to download an extra 30 gigabytes from the internet.
So much. I hate that so much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah, and it's worth noting that this whole Call of Duty thing, this is only going to happen if the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger goes through, and that is all very up in the air as of this weekend because it was right after the Game Awards that the FTC announced that they are suing Microsoft. So
I just think the whole thing is weird because everyone thinks like everybody's acting like Microsoft just walked in like a bully and was just like, you belong to us now. No one took into consideration like Activision was looking for a buyer and went, yeah, no, absolutely, let's buy us. Yeah, absolutely. This was Activision's idea. Like again, Microsoft didn't walk in and just be like, yo, we're gonna buy you whether you like it or not. So
sure.
I don't know. It's also a matter of, but it's Sony really, really does not want this to go through. They've been opposing Microsoft at like every possible step. Right. Even with like the whole Nintendo commitment thing, they've spoken out against it internally and said like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's a fake thing. It can't run on Switch. They don't have the right audience. Like,
it's just so weird because I feel like even if it doesn't go through, I still have faith that it will. But even if it doesn't go through, I really believe just because of how they've acted, it's gonna definitely sour the relationship between them and Activision. Because even what's his name, Bobby Kotick, I think. Even he was like, we don't, but regardless of how we feel about him here, he sent out an internal email to all the staff and was just like, look, we're gonna also fight to make this go through. Like Activision wants this, regardless of what Sony says. So it's going to sour the relationship between them, even if it doesn't go through. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. Probably sooner rather than later at this point, because I think there's a deadline for this whole merger to go through. So we should find out in the next couple of months or so, I'd say, unless the legal proceedings get really dragged out, which they probably will.
I mean, they are legal proceedings after all.
Yeah,
this is true.
Comes with the territory.
Yeah. So here's another little exciting thing. Now, we already talked about Fire Emblem Engage earlier in the show, but we actually got more Fire Emblem news on top of that. Well, at least over in Japan they did. They didn't technically give us this same trailer here, but a few weeks ago we were talking. We were like, are they going to show off? Like, is there like a hub in this game like there was in Three Houses? And now we know that there is. There is going to be this kind of hub area, and it looks different for sure. It doesn't look nearly. I guess my main takeaway from looking at this Japanese trailer, which you can watch over on NintendoEverything.com, is it definitely looks like they've scaled things back a little bit from Three Houses.
Yeah, I feel like that's not incredibly surprising, because for as fun as the Academy was in Three Houses, I think there were definitely some complaints that it was just a bit much, where it just pulled you away from the tactical aspect of the game and focused on just like running around the hub. And I don't necessarily agree with that personally, because I enjoyed running around the Academy, but I can understand where that impression is coming from. So I get why they would streamline it, if that's what they're planning to do.
Right. Yeah, again, you're talking to someone who hasn't played Three Houses, but from the outside looking in, it always looked like that was kind of their way of trying to market the game to more people, you know, because this was coming out around the time that Persona was very popular, and it all made a lot of sense. But yeah, this does kind of seem like a little bit of a course correction. Still seems good. There's some silly training mini games. You have to like, there was like one like later in the trailer where like your character's doing squats and you have to like hit the Dance Dance Revolution arrows to make them squat. It's just like funny.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I
what do you think, Dennis?
I think the hub is actually like it's really nice, but yeah, I mean, I will say I really enjoyed the hub in Three Houses a lot. Actually, I loved just running around and feeling like I was in this, you know, what at the time definitely felt like the equivalent to like Hogwarts, you know. But
sure.
But I will say I much prefer something like this. Because I do feel like a lot of the Academy felt shallow. There was just a lot of rooms that absolutely contributed nothing. It was all window dressing, right? And that sort of made everything feel, for lack of a better word, just useless. So I'd rather have something like this. I'd rather have small but deep
Focused.
rather than large and shallow. Yeah, exactly. Focused. So yeah, but that's just either way. I mean, I think it's a great looking hub, and but I, you know, again, credit where credit's due. I thought the Three Houses hub was still really good. So I don't mind either way. You know, whether they go this route or that route. You know, I'm just looking for a really nice detailed hub that you know, really has that sense of immersion, which, you know, Three Houses, you know, despite of what people feel about, you know, the content within it or its sort of validity, I felt very immersed, you know, just walking around and being part of that world for sure.
Right. Which is the whole point of something like that in the first
Absolutely.
place, I think, or part of it. So yeah, that game is, again, like coming out very soon, end of January. So we will definitely be talking about that game more once it gets closer to release, and probably well after, because it's a long game and who knows how long it's going to take our reviewer to beat it. All right, so there were a couple other release date announcements that we got that I just want to touch on really quick before we get into the later segments of our show today. So we've known for a little while that there's a new SpongeBob SquarePants game coming to the Switch. Very popular franchise, obviously. It's been a while since we've had an original game in the series. There's some good SpongeBob 3D platformers out there that hit the nostalgia button pretty hard for a lot of folks. So I'm actually pretty excited for this one. I grew up on SpongeBob, so I'm excited to see what this kind of... It feels like a greatest hits platformer, so it could be really good. But we now know this one is coming out on January 31st, right at the end of the month. So not long for that one either. Did either of you guys grow up on SpongeBob, or am I swimming alone here?
Not for me, sadly.
Understandable. Not for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely grew up on it, but that was definitely more my brother's thing. I definitely watched a lot of episodes. Like, you know, chances are if you try to name an episode, I would know what you're talking about. Well, maybe not name, but if you explain an episode, you know, I don't know the titles for each episode, but but yeah, and I mean, I like it enough where I have played quite a few games, in the franchise, for better or for worse, including the Rehydrated game that came out, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I thought that was
Yeah.
awesome. I had a lot of fun with that one. So, and I'm very much looking forward to this. So yeah, I mean, I like it enough that I am invested, and it is something that I do plan on playing. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely, it definitely wasn't my, if I had to put like top three cartoons of my childhood, it probably wouldn't make that list though.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's an acquired taste. The humor, I'd say, is not everyone's cup of tea. My
Sure.
my wife has no tolerance for it whatsoever, which I'm like, okay, I understand. But I really hope this game leans into the memes because I feel like we're at this point now where the SpongeBob memes have superseded like the show itself.
Yes,
In
definitely.
Probably,
terms of just cultural significance. So, yeah. So yeah, that's coming out end of January. I'm looking forward to that one. We also got a release date for River City Girls 2. In fact, it may already be out by the time you are listening to this, as it is coming out on December 15th. And yeah, this we were just talking about this last week actually, because there's currently well, this might be over by the time you're listening to this, but there was a trial for the first River City Girls game, and they were doing that to kind of hype up the release of this one. So yeah, another way forward developed beat 'em up to enjoy on the Switch.
I will take WayForward developed beat 'em ups over licensed Bakugan games.
Absolutely, any day of the week.
Given the choice, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know that's an unpopular choice to make, but
Yeah. You guys want to know how we feel about that? Go to we did review it at NintendoEverything.com. So, and let me tell you, it was not favorable.
Did you have some words to say?
I
Dennis?
had some. Yes, I will put it lightly. Yes, I had some words. Yeah.
how does
And
it
I did
rate
my
on
best.
the 1-2 switch scale?
On the okay,
Ooh.
we won't go that far. Hold on, no, that's
Is that a
that's,
3-point scale, like 1, 2, and then Switch
Exactly.
is like the highest tier?
Yes.
Okay. Love it. Okay, and this last one I just wanted to shout out just because it's a weird one. So I don't know if a lot of folks have heard of this game. So it's a rhythm game called Kizuna AI, Touch the Beat. And this game came out originally for VR. So I know this game because it launched like alongside the Oculus Quest. And it was one of like the 10 games in the store when that thing launched. And I never played it, but I was like, okay, I like rhythm games, I like VR, maybe I'll try it at some point. And now, like, all these years later, they're bringing it to other platforms. So, just kind of weird, but I'm interested in it, I guess.
yeah, I mean, better late than never. I love rhythm games, so and I've been a fan of Kizuna AI for quite some time actually. So it's really
Is
cool.
Is Kizuna AI, like, is this like up there with like Hatsune Miku, or is it not as well known?
Is it the same kind of thing?
Yeah, well, she's more of a VTuber. That's sort of how I found her. I found when Resident Evil 2 remake came out, I just happened to run into clips of Kizuna AI just playing some of it, and I thought it was just hilarious. And then I just sort of fell down a rabbit hole from there, just watching her play random horror games and stuff like that. But yeah, apparently she does.
rabbit hole.
Interesting.
Yeah, basically, yeah. but yeah, I
So
mean,
when you say she does VTubing, does that mean there's like a person who is always pretending to be this character, or is
There's a
or
person
do a
inside
lot
the
of people
robot,
just play
Nick.
this character?
yeah, that is the case with some, but I think Kizuna AI is actually just like Hatsune Miku, where they're just an AI powered
Okay.
just piece of software. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So she's sentient, basically. is what you're
Basically,
saying.
yeah. I mean, yeah, we've reached that point.
Have you seen
We should all be very
Terminator?
concerned.
'Cause it's basically the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yep, Terminator, and I've seen Blade Runner. Yeah.
If Skynet
Yeah,
were
when-
shaped like Kizuna AI and Hatsune Miku, the Earth would have been over with much faster.
Much faster. Yeah, much faster. Yeah, there'd be
Sense of
Yeah,
security
so
just
this
like
game-
blown out the window.
yeah, much more deception
Right.
in that case.
Yeah, this game is called Touch the Beat with an exclamation point, so that's not a suggestion, that's a command. So you need to be careful, or
No, I
Kizuna
mean,
will come after you.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, sure. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Except our new robot overlords.
There you go.
But yeah, no,
Oh,
it
man.
looks like a fun little game because I've always been a big fan of all the Hatsune Miku games, and this seems to be more or less in the same direction of it. So yeah, I mean, I'm all about it,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
In the ballpark, for sure. Yeah, and that one is coming out in April, so a little bit further out, but not too long to wait either for that one. All right, before we wrap things up, want to talk about some of the games that actually came out this week. We've been talking about so much about games that are coming out in the future. Let's talk about some of the games that are actually out now that you can go and download to your Switch if you feel so inclined. Probably the biggest release of the week is Dragon Quest Treasures, which is the latest game, more of a spin-off of the Dragon Quest franchise. It's an action RPG spin-off. I'd say a light action RPG. So very focused around, there is like an overworld, but it's very focused on finding these dungeons and kind of just battling your way through. Dennis, I know you're excited for this one. You haven't played it yet. Am I right on that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we were supposed to get it for review. Unfortunately, we haven't received the code just yet.
Right,
I don't think we will. But
yeah,
yeah, they've been kind of wishy-washy lately. But I know you did get your Crisis Core review code, didn't you?
I did. Yes, I
That's
did.
awesome.
I'm very much enjoying it. But
I know you're probably under NDA, so I don't want to ask too many. Or is it out now? I can't. I'm dude.
it comes
these days
out.
have been
It comes out very soon.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I got you.
No,
Okay.
it's not quite out yet, but
Okay.
yeah, I don't blame you for thinking that it was.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've just been seeing people jump into it, so I was confused because they didn't seem like press. The people that have been playing it lately, so I don't know if they're getting early copies from like Amazon, Target, stuff like that. But yeah, that's why I thought
there's not a strict NDA with this one, so I think that's
Okay.
why you're seeing a lot of.
They're just playing the
But-
PSP Crisis Core with an HD texture pack.
Fair enough. I don't
Could
fault them
be.
because I've done that. I've done that. So. But yeah, yeah. No, I'm still very much interested in it. To sort of, well, you know what? I won't say anything. Once we get into the end part of the show,
Okay.
then I'll talk
Okay.
about it. But
Fair
yeah.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, looks really charming. You can ride monsters. It's got really just cute art direction, but it still seems like it's got a lot of action. Very fast paced. Very over the top.
Yeah, looks really cute. I
so,
thought it was
yeah.
also coming out on PC. Apparently, this is like a pure Switch exclusive.
Really?
At the moment it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
only on the Switch.
Yeah, because I was looking for it on Steam like literally last night, and I was like, "What? It's not here."
That is very odd.
Yeah.
Frantically googling, can I run this on my Steam Deck? Like no, it's Switch exclusive. That's all you get. Oh no, I'm totally kidding. Only partially though.
Good old user.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, here's another one, not going to be to everyone's taste, but worth noting because I know there is an audience out there for it. So this game is called Samurai Maiden, and if you're a fan of like other kind of, what's the right way to put it?
Senran Kagura.
Fan servicey action games along the lines of like a Senran Kagura. This will probably be up your alley because it's definitely going for that same vibe. It's being published by D3 Publisher, which I guess is affiliated with Bandai Namco. I didn't know that, but yeah, it is just plain and simple. It's a combat action game where you control a trio of samurai girls who have been translated back to the, I don't know, historical era of Japanese history that I'm not familiar with. Nobunaga is there, so you get to control these 3 samurai girls and Nobunaga, the famous Japanese
samurai
warlord
girl.
general. So, yeah, of course.
Yeah, seems like
Yeah.
a less lewd Senran Kagura, but also the girls kiss now if you're into that. So.
Yeah, there you go. You win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too into it, but I have been playing. I've
Well, how is it gameplay wise?
Okay, well, I expect a full report.
honestly, it's possible actually, yeah, because I think I am writing a review on it. I just got sent a code, but I may actually like write a review for it. But
Gotcha.
it's just to keep things quick and easy. It's actually fine. It actually looks and runs great on the Switch. I was surprised by how crisp it was, and which is nice because I expected it to be like super blurred. But yeah, no, it looks great, runs great. My only issue is that the combat isn't as fluid as I would like it to be. Definitely not as fluid as Senran Kagura. I played
A little more stilted, you mean?
Yeah, it feels a little, for lack of a better word, just feels very stiff. However, I will say that the more you get into the game, you actually unlock more abilities that give you more button inputs, which I find very weird because when you start the game, for like first couple hours, you're basically doing the same three, you know, button prompts over and over again, same animation every time. But as you go through more of the game, and you have to create a sort of, you know, an affinity and a sort of admiration towards, you know, the other samurai, you get new abilities that way, and then that increases your move set. So that way, instead of just pressing X all the time, you can do X, 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 and then Y to add, you know, another move to your move set. But it just makes everything feel so stiff and slow because of it. And it's problematic because I don't know how many people are going to be committed to playing the game all the way through when the combat is literally, it almost feels like it's fighting against you, you know, and that is a bit of a problem. But otherwise, I mean, the story is pretty compelling, actually. I mean, it seems like a dumb concept, but it's actually surprisingly compelling. Yeah, but it's, you know, it's a typical sort of isekai also. But yeah, it's not bad. I'm enjoying it.
No, I mean, I will say, just like, I'm almost always down for a good combat action game like this, where it's just all about this stylish combat and just fast paced and just over the top action, and this definitely looks like that. And I think even if the art style and all that is not necessarily to your liking, I think there's still a lot of good qualities in this game. So I'm glad to hear that it runs well on the Switch.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, because everything that I saw for it was either on PC or PS4, so I was a little worried. But it's really crisp, like on the Switch. It looks really, really good.
Awesome. This is here's another game that just came out. And I'm not super familiar with this franchise, but I know it's very popular over on YouTube. Lots of people like to watch it. So there's a stealth horror game called Hello Neighbor. And it recently got a sequel that just launched on a bunch of platforms, including the Switch. And yeah, that game is out now. I don't know too much about it. I'm familiar with the concept, like you're like trying to sneak into spaces and figure out secrets and not get caught. I don't know what this game is so different about, other than it's just bigger in scope. But yeah. Either of you guys have any experience with this franchise?
Not really. I mean, Hello Neighbor was pretty big back when I was like in beta or early access, I think. But I haven't heard like anything about it or the series in general since. I didn't even really know that was a series, so
yeah, I've accidentally, I know this sounds weird, but I've accidentally invested a lot of time into it. Because, and I say accidentally because I've tried time and time to get to get into it, but dude, that first one was just so broken. Like, never mind the beta. I'm talking about like
very janky.
Yeah, like well after it came out, and then hide and seek was a little bit better, because it felt more focused instead of just doing this sort of, you know, deep. I don't want to say open world, but this sort of open area game. You have the, you know, these large scale sort of sandbox levels instead. So it was a little bit better. And then Secret Neighbor, as broken as that game was actually a surprising amount of fun. I had fun with that one. But Hello Neighbor 2, I played the alpha a while back because I just got these things. I just keep stumbling upon this nonsense. I got a code sent to me, and I was like, yeah, why not? And so I tried it, and I was once again very frustrated with it. I thought the whole thing was just so. There's so much promise there because I like the idea behind Hello Neighbor, and I like the art style, and I like what they try to do with it. I think it's very unique and very different from your typical, you know, horror game. But yeah, and then now that Hello Neighbor 2 is on Game Pass, I'm just like, well, I may as well. It doesn't cost me nothing. I may as well try try it out. So here I am, accidentally again stumbling on this thing. I don't know why, because I've already had a preconceived notion of me not enjoying this game, but I still want to give it a try to hopefully see what everyone else sees in it, you know, and I'll try to understand the popularity a little bit more. But yeah.
Yeah, I think part of the popularity with this franchise was just that the more kind of cartoony art style to it helped it appeal to a younger audience. I think that's why it got a lot of traction on YouTube with the first game in particular.
I will say also, like, the merchandising for that game has been weird because I remember when that game blew up, I was working at GameStop at the time, and we got so much product that was basically a plush of the neighbor, and I'm like, who wants to cuddle?
40-year-old dude.
Yeah, I'm like, who's wanting to cuddle with this neighbor, man? Like, you know.
Oh my god.
Like, it's so weird.
Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was at the mall. This is only partially related, but are you guys familiar with this horror game called Poppy Playtime?
Yes,
Have you guys heard of
I've
this?
played it. Yeah, I've played it. It's actually like really
Okay,
good.
it's terrifying. You can buy plushes of the like monster in that game that chases you around. They were like selling them at this toy store at the mall where
Yeah, I
near
would
where I
open that.
live. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what parent in their right mind would give their kid this demonic thing? I mean,
Yeah.
look up this monster in this game. It's freaking
Yeah.
terrifying.
I wouldn't
Like,
want
do you
that
want to
at
give your
all.
kid nightmares?
Like that sounds crazy.
I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want to lay next to that. No,
No, no,
thank you.
absolutely not. No, that thing is definitely terrifying. I will say the only thing that made sense horror-wise that was marketed hugely that could still translate to being cute was Bendy and the Ink Machine. There was a lot of plushes and stuff like that, and Bendy and all
Sure.
the characters when they're smiling anyways is actually really cute, but they do turn very, very messed up and frightening, when you play the game, the deeper you get into the game. But as characters themselves, when they look like how they normally look like in their quote unquote animations, they look really cute. So you can, those translate into cute little plushes, cute little figures and stuff like that. But yeah, anyone who's played Bendy knows how terrifying that game can be. It's a great game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, if you're looking for something a little creepy, but maybe not in the full horror spectrum, Hello Neighbor 2 might be worth checking out. I have no idea how it runs on the Switch, so
No idea.
enter with caution. But
Yep.
yeah.
It is on Game Pass though,
and
so for anyone interested.
there you go. Try before you buy. And yeah, just real quick, I just want to mention it briefly because we talked about them on a previous episode, but there's a couple of games from Thunderful that we talked about, Swordship, Togs, and Wavetail. All very different games, and they are all out now. They launched them all like within a week of each other. So if you want to hear us talk more about that, go listen to that episode of the podcast. But yeah, they all look really cool in their own way. So glad to see them all out now. And that pretty much wraps up our show for the week. But before we go, we're going to end with our final segment. What has everyone been playing lately? Nicholas, let's start with you. What have you been playing this past week or so?
I got a bit of a list actually. So,
Ooh, good.
because I finished Bayonetta 3. I started and I beat
Right.
Inscription. I've been playing through Monster Hunter
Did
Stories
you?
2 again. And also, I tried to spend a little bit of time playing Big Run and Splatoon 3. I didn't have too much time with it, sadly, but I still was able to experience it. So, a lot that I was able to do. I had a lot of free time.
Okay, I want to hear more about Inscription now that you have beat that game. What did you think?
It's good. It's interesting. The way that the game is... I'm going to try to stay relatively spoiler-free because the game does have quite a few aspects to it, but it changes styles a few times in a way that's interesting, while maintaining like a core sort of gameplay through line where the gameplay never changes up too much, but it adds and removes certain elements based on what the style of the game is. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I think it definitely has a kind of, how can I put it, like Pony Island kind of AR horror style thing, but it's not... The problem with some games I find that have this is that they kind of go too deep into it. Like, they try and make the story too much about... Well, it's just the game in general. Too much about the whole horror, there's something evil on your laptop, or whatever. Like, the sequel to Super Hot did that to an extent, and I really was not a fan of it. And I think Inscription kind of avoids that, by just still having a good narrative in and of itself, and also by just having really solid gameplay that constantly kind of tries to innovate on itself.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't really know what to make of it. I do just feel like I need to just sit down and play it because with everyone's talking in such vagaries around it, I feel like I don't really know what I'm getting myself into.
It's a
Okay, just
card game.
Answer this one question for me. Okay, is it a card game? Like, I know you said that obviously like there's some like surprises and changes, but do the cards remain like a central mechanic, or
Yes.
is it really just
Yes,
what
the
they're
core
showing?
the core gameplay the core gameplay of the game is that it is a card game. The general mechanics stay the same, but they add and remove a lot of aspects, and the way that you actually build out your deck changes a little bit. It's different depending... The game's divided into 3 acts, and each act kind of follows different mechanics. But it's still a
Gotcha.
card game throughout.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, I will definitely have to pick that one up at some point because sometimes that's the best way to get your questions answered about what a game is, right?
Yep.
Well, Dennis, what about you? What have you been playing this past week?
So yeah, I've been kind of flip-flopping between two. I wanted to revisit Digimon Survives. I've been playing that, and having a good time with that one. I think when I initially played it, I thought it was really, really good, and I reviewed it favorably. But it was a game that I felt sort of dragged a little bit, and there was
Mm-hmm.
sort of a misbalance between the visual novel segments and the the actual tactical portions of the game. Nothing as crazy as, let's say, Utawareru Mono, which I know is a crazy name, but it's a fantastic, fantastic series of games. But those are like they let you know ahead of time, like this is a visual novel purely. Now you're gonna have a couple of tactical segments in the game, but if you're going in expecting a Fire Emblem game or Final Fantasy Tactics or whatever, it's you're gonna be disappointed. Like this, go in with the mindset that it's a visual novel instead, and you'll be okay. Um,
Mm.
Digimon Survive, I think, did the opposite of that, right? Where they kept marketing it as like, here's this game
Right.
with gorgeous art, but it is a strategy RPG. No, it's not really, you know. And but it's okay because I mean I love visual novels anyways, and I think now that I've taken a break and I wanted to revisit it and restart it, I'm having a great time with it. Um, but
Just got to be in the right mood, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And again, I reviewed it favorably and I was very honest in my review and yeah, but I really wanted to give it the proper time and attention, without having the stress of, having to meet, embargo dates around it, So but
Totally.
yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. But the other game that that I actually just started about last night or 2 nights ago, um, I wanted to start up because we didn't get Dragon Quest Treasures. I was like, you know what? I think now, since I have it on PC now, let's go back and do Dragon Quest 11S. You know,
Oh,
so
nice.
Oh, good call.
yeah,
Good call.
yeah. So started that up and really enjoying that. It is crisp on PC, and it's cool because since I got the Xbox version, it's a play anywhere title. So if you buy it on Xbox, you get the PC version completely for free as a complimentary thing, and vice versa too, which is really cool. So and I can pick up right where I left off. So if I want to play on the TV, I can just pick up right where I left off from when I was playing on my computer. So that's really awesome. Um,
It's basically a Switch.
Basically, yeah, and I really like the Xbox Play Anywhere sort of program that they have. There's not enough games I feel like there's on it. Like there's really just a handful of games that take advantage of it, but it's really cool to see something like Dragon Quest take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And I want the next big RPG that I get probably going to be Soul Hackers 2, and that's sort of the same thing. I know that's a Play Anywhere title, which is really cool. So I can play on Xbox, so I can get the big sort of cinematic TV experience, but then I can have the more immersive, you know, my face 2 inches from the monitor,
Of course.
experience too.
Best of both worlds.
So yeah, no, it's really cool. And then of course, being able to remote play, on my phone or any other device that supports the Xbox app, I think that's awesome. Having that flexibility, and playing your games when you want to play them, how you want to play them, without any restrictions. I think it's great. But yeah, I've been revisiting Dragon Quest 11S, having a really really great time with it.
I've really wanted to start
Now,
that game a couple of times in the last few months, and I just haven't. And man, just hearing about that really makes me want to start it again.
I've just been in an RPG mood, man. Like it's the last
Yeah.
big RPG I played was, what was it, Final Fantasy 9. Played that, beat that.
It's been a few years then, huh?
Well, well, maybe a couple of weeks, right? But yeah, it's just I got done playing that maybe even a couple months ago, and then or a couple of weeks, whatever, and yeah, I took a little bit of a break, played some indies in between, nice puzzle games to have a nice little palate cleanser, and then yeah, now I'm ready to jump back into a
Back
big old
in it.
RPG. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this in the past. I do feel like I need to give Dragon Quest XI more of a shot. But man, like I couldn't get over just how grating the music was. I know that's like such like not maybe a great reason in everyone's mind to put down a game, but I could not listen to the same song
Yeah.
blaring in my ears. And I
Honestly,
don't want to turn off the sound because
No.
like I feel like I'm not getting the full experience. But yeah,
it's funny you bring that up because I literally had to turn down the music bar, like the sound settings, because it was becoming too much. And you're right,
Dun-dun-dun!
Yeah, it's too epic. I mean, it's good music, but like it's too epic, and having it on
exciting.
loop. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's like right at the beginning, like your mother's speaking to you and being like, oh, you're the luminary. You got to go out and basically save the world, whatever, blah blah blah. And then and she's being heartfelt, and then meanwhile you got the damn theme song going on, and it's this big happy-go-lucky. I'm like, this is more of a heartfelt moment. Why are you blasting this, royal, da 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 da, like, oh my god, like what is?
It's like you have a marching band following you around everywhere, but they only know one song.
Yeah, in the bathroom, everywhere. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like dude. It's crazy.
We almost played that prank on my principal in high school. We for our senior prank, we thought about hiring a mariachi band to follow him around the school for a day, but we couldn't raise enough money, so it didn't happen.
That would have been hilarious.
But it would have been like that. Yeah, would have been like that. No, well, I'm. If you finish it, let me know, because if you can manage to finish it, despite that, I will. First of all, be very proud, and second of all, it might actually encourage me to like truck through it. And
well, I was a bit worried to start it because I'm really interested in Crisis Core as well, but I mean I don't know. I mean I'll it's not a. I can wait a little bit.
Too many RPGs.
Yeah. Yes.
You better finish it before
speaking of Crisis
Octopath
Core
comes out. And Fire Emblem and everything else.
Well, that's the thing, right? Fire Emblem's in a month. I know, we're scheduled to review that, which is, I'm taking the helm of that. So like that's, I don't want to pile on too much, because between this and Digimon Survive, that's a lot of hours. A lot of hours.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Crisis Core, and I have actually been playing a bit of that lately. It's a really good port, I'll say that. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm still kind of early in the game and I want to play some more of it. But overall, I'll just say, like, from a technical perspective, very impressive Switch port. Like, up there with some of the best third-party ports we've seen, in my opinion. I mean, it just runs almost flawlessly on the Switch. It doesn't... You can definitely still feel, like, the older elements of, like, the PSP original game. Like, you can definitely still feel, like... but it feels very at home on the Switch because it started off as a portable game and the structure was always kind of designed for a handheld system, and now you're getting this just like the best version of this game. And and it's also my introduction to really the whole Final Fantasy VII mythos. So that was kind of why I wanted to play it. But I'll share more on that next week once I've played it some more. But the other thing I've been digging into this week is the DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah, right.
I was kind of whittling away. Yeah. Yes, it did. Yeah, it's been great, man. I'm so glad I have a reason to boot up this game again. Because I played the hell out of it when it launched on the Switch, because it was like the game I was most excited for when the Switch came out. Because I didn't have a Wii U, and so I didn't play the original Mario Kart 8. But after the luster wore off, I didn't really have a reason to pick it up, and with all these courses coming back in, it's really just revitalized my love for this game.
Yeah, it looked like some of the courses also looked just really nice. Like Rainbow Road in particular, the few videos that I saw of it, it looked like one of the better courses, just even compared to the base game ones. Just visually, at least.
Yeah, it's I'd say overall it's still kind of a mixed bag, but yeah, some of the courses are really good. Rainbow Road, it's kind of a version of the one that was in the 3DS game. That one looks beautiful. The Merry Mountain course is also just very strong. Yeah, I think all the courses, I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but most of the courses look really good. The 3DS port of Rainbow Road in particular does really shine. I mean, coming from the 3DS version of that game to this is just a really quite the glow up, I will say. Merry Mountain is also just a really beautiful course. I mean, I'm a sucker for like holiday themed aesthetics in general. Like, they did a great job making this game just look just like this course, I should say, just look really just magical, and it's also just a very fun course. I will say I am kind of getting tired of all those city courses though. Like, it was cool at first, but they do all kind of blend together a little bit at this point. Like, if you were to like put up footage of one of them, I mean, I guess I might recognize like some of the landmarks and stuff, but ultimately you're in all of them, you're just like going through a bunch of buildings, and then the course changes between each lap, and it's a little bit different, and I don't know. It sounds like a weird thing to complain about, but I don't know. I don't think I'm the only one who feels this way.
Sort of get it. I mean, it's also the fact that just from the looks of it, it didn't seem like was it London and Berlin? The London and Berlin courses were too different stylistically, so I can imagine how those would blend in a little bit here.
Yeah, I think that might be part of. I mean, yeah, because like when I think of like the Paris Promenade course, I mean that one is great and it really stands out. But when I'm thinking of even like the Tokyo course compared to these ones, the Tokyo one came out in the last wave, they do all kind of blend together a little bit too much for me.
Right.
I don't know. I'd prefer to see some other courses brought back from like the DS and the Wii ones.
There's still like 5 city courses they can bring over, so buckle in.
This is true. I mean, we do still have, worth mentioning, like 24 more tracks being added to this game.
Yeah, we're halfway done, so still a lot more.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I still can't get over how much content is being added. Like, and I really don't know. I mean, it really feels like, I hope this isn't the case, but like, where do you go from here? Because the Mario Kart games have all kind of, it's been their thing. Like, we're going to have some new courses and we're going to bring back some old courses. But if most of the notable old courses are in this game, like, what does that mean for the future of Mario Kart? I mean, they've got to really do something different, or they have to have something planned. I just don't know what it would be.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard to top.
I do think it's very interesting that these updates haven't just been straight, like, hey, here's your new tracks, though. How they've actually modified the game in, like, little ways. Where in this update, they've ended up adding, like, the whole custom items feature. And they also made some slight changes to how invincibility works. Where now you will no longer... Apparently, it's if you're hit by lightning in your glider, you won't fall to the ground anymore. And also, based on your cart, you'll have more or less iframes after getting hit. Which is just some... Like, you wouldn't expect the game to get what is basically, like, balance updates and those kinds of, like, new modes and features. But they're doing that. And that makes me wonder if part of it is kind of experimenting for what they're going to do in terms of the mechanics of the next game when we get there.
Yeah. That's a really great point. It is weird that they're doing this now when the original game came out in 2014, you know? But I guess better late than never. I don't know. Maybe they're gearing up to have some big Mario Kart League or something. I don't know.
It's possible. I remember hearing rumblings about, like, apparently Mario Kart Tour on the phones secretly is Mario Kart 9. So the next big console Mario Kart is just going to be called Mario Kart X. To represent the 10, basically.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, but I know they want to go towards, which I think would be better, honestly, especially with all this content that they have now in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, go towards a sort of live service method. Maybe not full on, but something akin to, let's just say, Splatoon, and have those constant updates and just those content drops, basically. So just sort of using Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as almost like a stepping stool into something that's going to be absolutely, hopefully, massive, for the next big console entry.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's really hard to say. You know what I hope is going to happen? Well, maybe not hope, but I wouldn't complain. They should we're going to skip the next Mario Kart and just bring back Diddy Kong Racing. Let's just do that instead. They're going to make a big Diddy Kong Racing blowout sequel. Yeah. I would actually be thrilled about that. But or, I mean, they did this with all like the DLC for Mario Kart 8, but go full crossover, man. Bring in all the Nintendo characters, make it the Super Smash Brothers of Mario Kart. Like, let us race as Samus and Link and all these Nintendo characters.
Give me Kirby.
Going through all the different Nintendo brand worlds. Yes. Yeah, and like, there's just so much potential. Like, like instead of like the traditional power-ups, like man, like Kirby's power-up is like he can like suck up his enemies and spit them out somewhere else on the course or something. Like I don't know, man. There's so much they could do.
Remember the Smash reveal trailer for Rosalina? How it started with the characters on Rainbow Road and you had Kirby racing with them? Why? How is that not a thing yet? Why have they not made that a thing yet?
I don't remember those. Wait, did that really happen?
Yes, that was how the Smash reveal trailer started. It was like Kirby racing with the other characters on Rainbow Road. It was like Donkey Kong and like Mario, and I think someone crashes and then they find a Luma and then it reveals Rosalina. But Kirby's there, karting with them. Let that be reality, please.
Oh, you're talking about like the Smash Bros. For
Wii U, like back in 20,
God,
what, 13, 14?
So around.
That old one.
Oh yeah, there he is. I'm watching the show right now, but Kirby's not in a cart, I should mention. Well, he's on his little superstar.
Which is even better. Do that. It fits so well.
That's good. Yeah. Bring back Kirby Air Ride, you cowards. The people have spoken. That's right. All right, folks. Well, that is our show for the week. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and listening to us ramble about video games and other nonsense for way too long. We really appreciate everyone's support. And if you like the show, please spread the word. We are on pretty much every audio streaming platform that most people would listen to, from Spotify to Audible to, Google Podcasts. And if there's some obscure platform that we are not on that you listen to, let us know and we might be able to put it up on there too. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for tuning in. We will be back at you next week. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me take that back. Also, Louise is not here right now, but I just want to say shout out to Louise. Louise edits this podcast every single week, does a great job, and we all really appreciate him. So we would not have this show without Louise.
Yeah, he's the real VIP.
Yes. And hopefully we will have him back on the show soon. But in the meantime, thank you everyone so much for listening, and we will be back at you next week with everything new and exciting in the world of Nintendo. See you guys later.